Question number 1.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All right. It is now illegal for a person to own an XL bully type dog without a valid exemption certificate. Any person who is in breach of the law could be subject to prosecution. As the member will be aware, I introduced these measures in response to public safety concerns and to bring Northern Ireland in parity with the rest of the UK, where similar measures have already been implemented. The Republic of Ireland has also made it illegal to breed, sell or import XL bully dogs since the 1st of October 2024. The deadline to apply for an exemption certificate passed on the 31st of December 2024, and councils have informed me that as of today, out of the 698 licensed XL bully dogs in Northern Ireland, there have been 673 applications for an exemption certificate. This is 96% of the known population. Complete final data on the number of dogs which have been granted an exemption certificate will not be known until all applications have been processed, and so the final number of certificates approved may vary slightly. It is encouraging, however, that the overwhelming majority of owners have embraced the need for responsible dog ownership and have taken the necessary steps to ensure compliance with the legislation. My department continues to liaise with all councils on a regular basis to provide appropriate support and guidance.
Mr. Durkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for that answer. It is heartening to see that high percentage of exemption certificates issued. However, given that there were only 140 of these dogs registered last March, and come the end of December there were almost 700, given that increase in the number of registrations in that short period of time, is the Minister concerned that there might be a number of these dogs still out there unregistered, and does he have any plans in conjunction with councils to identify if that is the case and where they might be?
Mr. Durkin.
I thank the member for his supplementary question. People must remember it's an offence not to licence their dog. Although dog licensing is a council matter, my department is working with stakeholders on key priorities on licensing and encouraging compliance, as the income funds from the essential dog warden service in councils is assisted by the dog licence fee. And I'm meeting the councils later this week, and we can discuss a bit more about how can we encourage further uptake in terms of dog licensing. Specifically, we're just going the figures we've got in terms of the number of dogs that are licensed, and I think it's important we encourage people to do that.
Dumbler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for the information given so far on this issue. Can I ask further to that how Northern Ireland's approach to the XL bully breed compares to other jurisdictions in the UK and Ireland, and if he has any more information on the further efforts to ensure dogs are licensed?
Minister.
So XL bully legislation has already been implemented in England, Wales and Scotland, and when I made my decision to introduce this legislation in Northern Ireland, I did that in that context and also to protect public safety in Northern Ireland. The legislation introduced here is broadly similar to the legislation introduced in the rest of the UK, although Northern Ireland will not be implementing a deregistration process. The Republic of Ireland has also made it illegal to breed, sell or import XL bully dogs since the 1st of October 2024, and the deadline for exemption applications is the 1st of February this year. And I met the relevant minister, which is Heather Humphreys, a while ago to discuss these issues and the need for continued cross-border collaboration on these issues, of which there is a significant amount already occurring.
Alan Chambers.
Minister, you will recall that I have raised in this House before the issue of control of these dogs in a residential setting. And in recent months there have been serious attacks throughout the United Kingdom, and indeed some tragic fatalities in family homes. Does the Minister plan to keep this issue under review?
Minister.
So the member has been steadfast in raising this issue with myself, and I understand the reason why, because of the safety concerns around this. The legislation that I made, which was secondary legislation, was what was available to me under the primary legislation that's in Northern Ireland. It is something I will keep under review, because it's the same reason that yourselves are raising it, because of the concerns in this area. And what we want to do is, more broadly, is to raise better awareness about good dog ownership, and that's something I'm doing with stakeholders about how we can raise awareness of that issue.
John Buckley.
Mr. Speaker, and where a dog acts or behaves in an aggressive manner, I have no problem whatsoever with the authorities dealing with that individual dog. But I've always had issue and concern regarding the designation of a full breed under the legislation, and the Minister knows that. He'll be aware of the 5-month-old puppy in Lisburn and Castlereagh Max that under the breed legislation guidance would have had the puppy put down at 5 months old. Now, thankfully, there was a reprieve for a third-party assessment, but can the Minister not accept that to put a healthy puppy down based off an interpretation of how it may in the future behave is totally wrong?
So on the issue of Lisburn and Castlereagh, which the member has referenced, under the legislation, any dog considered to be a restricted breed and under the legislation, any dog considered to be a restricted breed and in council care can only be returned to its owners if the courts determine it's suitable for exemption. Until there is confirmation of the dog's breed, which you understand the relevant council has agreed to reassess when it is more matured, the council is not in a position to release it. Pit bulls have been a restricted breed since 1991, and the exemption process for the breed also entered in 1991. It is illegal to breed, sell, gift, exchange or abandon a restricted breed dog, and I want to emphasise the reasons for restricting pit bulls in terms of protecting public safety still pertain.
Ciara Ferguson.
Just in relation to the exemptions, and I'm aware both the 31st of December, and I'm also aware that particularly in our own local council area, the council staff have been really proactive in out visiting those and encouraging them. I did have in the new year ones that didn't meet the deadline and were gravely concerned. Was there any directive given by the department in relation to council and people who missed the 31st deadline, but it was the 2nd or 3rd of January? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you. So, first of all, I want to put on record my thanks especially to animal welfare stakeholders, but also print and broadcast media in terms of the effort that was undertaken last month in raising awareness around the pending deadline around this. And I think that has demonstrated itself in terms of the level of sign-up for the exemption process, and I want to thank people for that. In terms of the deadline, it was set in legislation, and that date is now unfortunately passed. Therefore, it is no longer possible to apply for an exemption regardless of the circumstances. Owners had a period of almost 5 months, the longest window provided in all of the UK, to submit their application. My department, in conjunction with councils, carried out extensive communications and had direct contact with known XL bully dog owners to ensure they were aware of the legal requirements and the consequences of missing the deadline. Unfortunately, any unexempted XL bully that is found may be seized by dog wardens and the relevant council responsible for enforcement will decide the best course of action. Owners of seized dogs may have to go through a court process to allow them to retain ownership of the dog. My department will provide comprehensive guidance on the legislation to councils and continues to work intensively with the Northern Ireland Dog Advisory Group representing council dog wardens to ensure the legislation is effectively enforced. Seeking executive approval for the introduction of the dilapidation bill once the process of confirming that the bill is within the legislative competence of the Assembly is completed. The proposed bill will provide councils with a modern and fit-for-purpose regime, including a clear toolkit of powers to tackle dilapidated buildings and neglected sites, including a series of notices, offences, penalties and appeals. Powers will be similar to those available to local authorities in other parts of the UK, where low-level dilapidation can be dealt with at a much earlier stage.
Mr Dunn.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I appreciate the Minister's answer. And the Minister will be aware that some within the sector have been calling for this for some time, and it would benefit many areas, including within our own constituency of North Down, where some derelict buildings can become a real health and safety hazard. Can the Minister give us a more detailed timescale for when we will see it in action, and when will it benefit the redevelopment and regeneration within our town, city and village centres?
Sure.
So as soon as we get sign-off from DSO and those legal sign-offs, I'll bring it to Executive and then I'll bring it to the Assembly. It has taken a bit longer than I anticipated, but I would hope that it does come here very soon, so then we can scrutinise the legislation and we can see the benefits of legislation passing in this Assembly for local communities.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and thank you very much, Minister. I know, like myself, you share frustration that regeneration was not put down to councils to deal with. But, Minister, I'm quite excited about this dilapidation bill as the proposer has put forward. Can you maybe outline to us what difference this bill will make to the regeneration of our towns and cities?
So dilapidation is something that does affect towns and cities, and it's an area that once it develops, then it restricts investment in the area because people are less inclined to do that. So this legislation will give councils the powers to be able to tackle this dilapidation in their areas, particularly in terms of the powers to go after if they can't find the owner, in terms of the financial bodies around us. So this is by bringing us up to date in terms of the legislative powers, and we've been working closely with the councils on this to give them the necessary tools within this legislation.
Dr. Aiken.
Minister for his replies so far. Minister, one of the issues that's been raised to me about the dilapidation bill, which will be welcomed probably to most people, is about the issue of historic buildings and buildings that do have a degree of significance that some people just won't quite like to get rid of for various reasons for that. Could you outline any safeguards that we expect to have within the dilapidation bill to ensure that our much valued built environment is not desecrated?
So at the outset, in response, I would declare I'm a member of the Ulster Architectural Heritage Society, so I do have an appreciation of our built heritage and in terms of listed buildings. That primarily sits within the Department for Communities, and when councils are exercising the functions associated with this legislation, that's one of the benefits in terms of the greater enhancement of powers to councils, because also then some elements of listed buildings protection within planning also sits with councils, so there's an expectation that they would consider this in the round when they're looking at the interventions in relation to this. They currently already have powers such as urgent works notices, so this is bringing us in addition to this. But I think it's an important point, and I'd like to see a situation in Northern Ireland where we value our built heritage a lot more, because it's something that when we do have it, it's something that's for the tourism to come and see, and for us to be able to celebrate our history in Northern Ireland.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker. Minister, you touched on the fragmented nature of responsibilities here. When the dilapidation bill is finally introduced, can I ask that there is very careful joint working, to use that cliche, between the different agencies? We clearly have a crisis in terms of, certainly in parts of the city, I brought it to this chamber around the Tribeca Quarter, but also Crumlin Courthouse, where we are allowing our built heritage to slip into disrepair. Will there be jointery between councils, the Communities Department, in some cases the Finance Department, and yourselves and yourself responsible for the dilapidation bill to actually properly to make this all joined up and cohere in terms of regeneration?
So I'm very keen that we do that, and that's why I will be visiting Belfast City Centre with the Lord Mayor and also the Minister for Communities around dilapidation within the city centre, because it's important we have that joined up approach, and have a continued liaison with the Finance Minister, because we all have different powers, but we can use those collectively to deal with those areas which we want to see that regeneration within our towns and cities. So that's a practical example of the cooperation that we're doing immediately before passage of this legislation. It's something also about my own commitment to working with local government and also across departments.
Peter McReynolds. Minister.
The Climate Action Plan will set out Northern Ireland's approach to meeting the carbon budget for 2023 to 2027. It will also establish a pathway towards the interim targets for 2030 and 2040 and the overall net zero by 2050 target. Ambitious policies and proposals will be required to put us on a path to net zero. Our current policies as they stand will not be sufficient. My department has been leading on the development of our first Climate Action Plan with input from all departments. Extensive work has been undertaken to ensure that we have a credible plan which is supported by robust science and evidence, which I think is really important. Significant progress has been made. Last month, the first 3 carbon budgets for the periods 2023 to 2037 and the interim 2030 to 2040 emission targets were set. This legislation came into operation on the 12th of December 2024, and it was a really positive moment. Officials are now in the process of finalising the draft Climate Action Plan document for consultation. Given the cross-cutting nature of the Climate Action Plan, the draft will need to be approved by the Executive prior to its publication for consultation. I aim to bring the draft Climate Action Plan to the Executive colleagues as soon as possible, seeking their approval to publish the plan for a 16-week statutory consultation. I am fully committed to delivering a Climate Action Plan that is transformational, evidence-based, informed by stakeholders and in line with my own commitment for a just transition.
Mr. McReynolds.
Thank you, Minister. And Minister, I'm sure you'll have seen the devastating destruction of the wildfires in LA over the last week. And against that context, what is your response to news that in 2024 it was the first year to pass the 1.5 degrees global warming limit?
I thank the member for his question. I think it's an important question. That news is very concerning, but sadly not surprising. It's yet another example of a global tipping point. And what we know is that with these events, climate change is expected to become more severe and frequent as that warming increases, and this is going to have real-life impacts on lives and livelihoods, and tragically we're seeing that today. And my thoughts are with all the people affected in California, especially those who have lost loved ones and have been forced to flee their homes. And whilst that might be on our TV screens, it is real to us here today in Northern Ireland, because each one of us, whether individually as citizens but also as governments, needs to take action in relation to climate change and to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, because it doesn't need to be like this, and it's really important that we invest in taking action, whether it's climate change mitigation or adaptation, and that's why I'm taking forward this work around climate change, because I believe in it, and I believe we have a moral responsibility for not just the people of Northern Ireland but way beyond that to address those issues which are affecting people across this globe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, the delay in the Climate Action Plan is concerning because of the crisis in global terms. What impact do you actually think that it will have on our ability to meet the interim carbon budgets and the overall net zero targets as well? And you did mention and talk about the cross-cutting nature of this. You know, are you concerned about the lack of pace that we're making towards these?
Minister.
And thank you, Sinead, for your question. We lost a lot of pace in this place around taking action on climate change as a result of the collapse of this Assembly. We lost 2 years of that, and we lost years before that in terms of stop-go government, and that's why we need to have reform of these institutions. But upon taking up office, I've been working hard on this, and I worked hard to get executive agreement around the carbon budgets, and then I was glad to get support within this Assembly to be able to do that. What we did is we moved very quickly thereafter, so that was just before Christmas, so I met up with officials very quickly after that to go through the content of the CAP, and that's now being finalised. It's important, it's detailed work, and then we're bringing that to executive for consultation. The first CAP, I'm quite confident about it in terms of what's in it and what the interventions are. It is a bit like a marathon. The first 10k is a bit easier than the last, but I think it's important that we do the first 10k around this, and that we collectively take action on this, because just me or my department can't do it. We all need to do it collectively together, and that's why I'm confident in Northern Ireland we can do that if we actually put our shoulder to the wheel on this issue, because I'm massively positive around this, and I brought the Green Growth Strategy to the executive, and I continue to engage with my executive colleagues to get agreement on that, because this is about the benefits associated with decarbonisation, which is about good green jobs, which hopefully everyone's on board with.
All for it.
It seems to be that the main outcome, or one of the main outcomes of the Minister's ambitious plans, is to penalise hard-working people trying to provide a living for their families, including business owners, including farmers, including electricity bill payers and ordinary employees. How can this Minister ensure that the transition is a just transition?
Minister.
So I'm firmly committed to a just transition, and I'm taking action on that. So that's why we're looking to set up a Just Transition Commission here in Northern Ireland. It'll perhaps be one of the first Just Transition Commissions set up in statute. But beyond that, I'm glad to be able to secure agreement with the Finance Minister to set up a Just Transition Fund for Agriculture within the draft budget. That's an example of my commitment to that. I'm going to encourage people to respond to the consultation around a Just Transition Commission, because the road to net zero has to be about a just and fair journey, and that's what I'm passionately committed to.
Joanne Bunting.
Question 4, please.
Minister.
The enforcement of non-farmed animal welfare remains a statutory responsibility of each council, and they are best placed to determine how this function should be discharged and the level of resource required to meet the specific requirements of their region. My department has no remit to dictate how councils fulfil this requirement, and to do so would undermine their legal and operational authority. Nevertheless, my department has established structures to liaise with local councils to discuss non-farmed animal welfare policy and legislation. Councils, for example, are represented in my department's multi-agency enforcement working group alongside the police. I also intend to meet the councils later this week to discuss animal welfare priorities for the remainder of this mandate and to listen to their views.
Ms Bunting.
Thank you, and I'm grateful to the Minister for that answer. He will be aware that there are a considerable number of animal welfare and cruelty issues ongoing across Northern Ireland, and likely a great number going unreported and undetected. I'm advised that on average each councillor has only 2 dedicated officials to take forward every aspect of this work. Could I ask him what message he is hearing from local government on capacity, what assessment has his department made of current effectiveness, and what more can it do to help?
Minister.
I thank the member for her supplementary question. As I said, I'm meeting with the district councils this week, and I think it's important we collaborate together on this. And what I would say is that outcome from your question is we encourage people to report any concerns around animal welfare to the district councils, because it's important those issues are reported to allow follow-up. But we're meeting later on this week, and we can see what more further work we can do by working together on this issue, because all collectively we can achieve a lot more.
Anya Murphy.
Minister, have you actually assessed whether local councils have the sufficient funding in order to deal with the increase of complex animal abuse and cruelty cases?
So it's for each council to take forward their provision of services around this, and obviously they have the ability to raise revenue through the rates, and I understand the financial pressures that each council faces, as does my department, and particularly in light of the draft budget settlement for next year. But what we can do is we can work together, particularly around legislation I'm looking to bring forward, which hopefully address some of the concerns a number of members have addressed in this chamber. For example, we're going to be commissioning an expert-led review around dog breeding establishments. I've heard a lot of concerns around that. I've listened to that, and hopefully through taking forward potential legislation around that, that'll also make life a wee bit easier for councils in terms of their duties.
Andrew McMurray.
Thank you, Minister, and thank the member for the question. Just to ask the Minister what action he plans to take to improve animal welfare within the remainder of this mandate.
Minister.
So we're currently finalising those plans, and had a really good engagement just before Christmas with relevant animal welfare stakeholders. It was a really good engagement, not just in Clare House as a department, but also with the all-party group on animal welfare, which my colleague John Blair to my left ably chairs. And we're able to discuss some of the different areas that we're looking to take forward, one of which is Lucy's Law, which is a ban on third-party sale of pups and kittens. The other one, as I've outlined, is a comprehensive expert-led review in dog breeding licensing. The other one is an aversive training devices ban. I just don't agree with the shock collars. I think they should be banned. There's also bringing in mandatory microchipping of cats, and also looking at particularly around licensing of rescue and rehoming organisations. We're also looking at bringing in CCTV in slaughterhouses. So they're just some of the things that we're discussing, and we're meeting with the police and councils this week. And what we're very conscious of is we've got a restricted mandate here, but we can actually focus our resources and work together to get the outcomes. And I find that engagement with the different stakeholders really good, because we can get their perspective of what can work around this. But most importantly, when we're doing this, we need to make sure the legislation we make is actually going to tackle the issue, and that's where we're going to continue that engagement, and we're going to do consultation on these issues.
Bradley.
Speaker, question 5.
Minister.
My department does not provide financial support to local councils to address dog fouling. However, it is responsible for the legislation that grants district councils the powers and flexibility, subject to upper and lower limits, to set their fixed penalty notices for dog fouling offences. In December 2022, following requests from key stakeholders and members of the public to take stronger action in relation to dog fouling offences, my officials amended this legislation to increase the maximum penalty available to councils for dog fouling offences from £80 to £200, and some councils have since increased their fixed penalties.
Mr. Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. Minister, my office have been working closely with council's dog wardens in my constituency to tackle this issue in a number of areas across the North Coast. The dog wardens are doing their best with limited resources. Is the Minister aware of how many fines have been handed out by councils in the past year to dog owners who have let their pets foul?
I don't have those statistics to hand, but my department does support local councils in relation to this. So in addition to overseeing the robust legislation which covers the fixed penalty notices issued by local councils for dog fouling offences when they occur, my department is also committed to reducing and preventing dog fouling offences. DAERA supports educational and promotional campaigns aimed at achieving behavioural change. Our Environment Fund directly supports Keep Northern Ireland Beautiful to deliver a number of programmes, including eco-schools, Live Here, Love Here and Adopt a Spot, all of which promote a sense of civic pride and encourage individual environmental responsibility. I will revert back to the member with the information if we have that at hand. Perhaps may not be because it's collected by district councils, but you raise an important issue, and it's something I'm aware of, that Harvey Milk, one of the first openly gay men elected in the United States, one of the issues he campaigned on was dog filing.
Mr. Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 6, please, Minister.
A public consultation on the establishment of the Just Transition Commission was launched on the 11th of November 2024 and has been extended to the 17th of January 2025, and I would encourage people to make any responses they feel necessary to that. The consultation focuses on the proposals to establish the Commission, including the legislation that will set out the type of public body the Commission should be, its composition, the Commission's role and legislative functions, the proposed sectors to be represented, its reporting arrangements and the secretariat and support required. As part of the consultation, my officials have also met with various groups within the mandated sectors to be represented on the Commission to seek their views. Following the completion of the consultation, the feedback will be analysed and the draft regulations will be updated. My officials will ensure that the Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs Committee, which you ably chair, are updated on each step of the process. I shall then seek approval from my executive colleagues on the final draft regulations that will establish the Commission. The regulations will then go through the necessary draft affirmative legislative process, including laying regulations in this place for debate and approval. Once the regulations are made and an operation or recruitment competition will be launched to appoint members of the Commission, and this will be in accordance with the Commissioner for Public Appointments Northern Ireland guidelines. The Just Transition Commission is an important body to support all departments in ensuring a net zero transition which is fair and just. I am hopeful that the Commission will be in place during 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Minister for a very detailed answer. But the Minister will also be aware that politicians make false promises and lean towards the Labour government in particular with regard to farming and agriculture. So we have our farming families and agriculture sector hitting the double whammy last year of unfulfilled promises from the Labour government. What assurance can the Minister give to the farming and agri sector in regard to their voice in the creation, and not just the creation but the outcomes for a Just Transition Commission, given that farmers and the agricultural sector probably face some of the biggest challenges to help us achieve net zero?
Minister.
So I heard that anger at the Oxford Farming Conference when I was there last week around the UK Government's decision around inheritance tax, and at the platform again outline my opposition to that, and I'm looking forward to meeting with the Ulster Farmers Union, NIAPA and the Finance Minister soon to discuss ways forward around this and further representations we can make to the UK Government, because I believe the proposed changes around inheritance tax are wrong. In terms of Just Transition for Agriculture, agriculture will be represented as part of the Just Transition Commission, but we're going further than that, and the engagement I had with the Finance Minister subsequent to the budget of last year, where we didn't get a Just Transition Fund for Agriculture, have been successful, and the Finance Minister has allocated a draft amount of money for us to be able to create our own Just Transition Fund for Agriculture here in Northern Ireland. I'm now working through officials about what that will be about, and I think that's really, really key. So it's not only just about a policy commitment, but it's also around funding. And I am personally very committed for a just transition, not just for farming and agriculture, but more broadly, because it has to be fair and just for us to be able to bring people together on this road towards decarbonisation.
Patsy Malone.
The very constrained funding available to the Executive and agreed draft budget for 2025-26 provides a very difficult proposed outcome for my department. I'm currently working with my officials on how much Resource DEL and Capital DEL funding can be allocated to Lough Neagh to continue to take forward this important work in the next financial year. The implementation of the Lough Neagh Action Plan to address the blue-green algae issues requires significant investment across departments. The issues in Lough Neagh have been decades in the making, and there's no quick fixes. It is important that there is a sufficient budget allocation in relation to this. I am seeking a meeting with the Finance Minister to discuss the draft budget. And there was a bid within, just as context, within the draft budget of £11.5 million for the Environmental Improvement Plan, including Lough Neagh, and I wasn't awarded any funding towards that. I am engaging with officials in terms of what budget allocations we can make internally, but it's important also I continue to engage with the Finance Minister around this key issue.
Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, could you advise, we've heard it mentioned here on numerous occasions, the effluent from sewage disposal works into the watercourse, and you have committed in the past, and you have said indeed that officials from your department will meet and have met with the DFI and NI water officials. Could you advise, please, what have been the outcome of that to try and remedy that effluent that's running into our watercourses quite frequently?
Please, Minister.
So we're aware of the issues in terms of water quality and what the sources are around that. Obviously, agriculture, wastewater and septic tanks are one of the key issues around that. I tasked officials to review what is known as SORPI, which is a Statement of Regulatory Principles and Intent. Essentially, it's a separate regulatory regime for NI water, where the consideration of any decisions around enforcement, the historic underinvestment is taken into account around that. I don't believe it's fit for purpose. I feel that it's something that is not fair in terms of having a separate regime for NI water. I have a mind to withdraw from SORPI, and I will be writing, if not have already, sent communication to both DFI and NI water of that opinion. I'll be seeking their views and then taking a final decision within 8 weeks' time.
Moving to topical questions, and the first member down is Patsy Malone. So keep going, Patsy.
That worked out well. A double. Minister, recent inquiries by my colleague Colin McGrath uncovered that 10.2 million had been paid in settlement of employee disputes within departments since 2015. That figure didn't include DAERA, who wouldn't give details. Can you advise why not?
Thank you, Patsy. My department takes all litigation claims seriously and complies with managing public money guidance from the Department of Finance. The amount spent by DAERA on all special payments, which includes litigation cases, is published annually in the Department's annual report and accounts. Central departmental records, however, do not differentiate between various types of compensation cases, and this has necessitated a comprehensive review of our records. My department is currently revising its procedures to assist with making this information more readily available.
Mr Malone.
Thank you for that, Minister. So is that the case now? And if it is the case, I thank you for your intervention, that that information will in fact be made readily available on the public record.
I'm happy to write back to the member once we've done this review of records around this issue.
Mr Rodley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, can I ask the Minister what action he has taken to acquire semi-mature trees for planting along riverbanks and rivers leading into Loch Ness, and has he any plans to carry out such planting schemes?
Minister.
So there's probably two sides to that. There's the work that Forest Service are taking forward, and the Small Woodlands scheme is open for applications as far as I'm aware at the moment. So there's already current schemes within the Loch Ness Report and Action Plan. We're looking at specific interventions around this, particularly in terms of the replanting of riparian buffers. That's something that already occurs within, for example, the Sustainable Catchment Programme. I was privileged enough to visit the programme within the Upper Bann catchment area and see the good work that was going on there, where that planting is taking place in conjunction with Rivers Trust. As part of the Loch Ness Report and Action Plan, we're looking at what more we can do about that, and that's where we're looking to review our progress on that and to explore, as part of the budget for next year, what more we can do. So there's a lot happening, but we're reviewing what more we can do around this, because it's absolutely crucial that we do that and we do a lot more planting around these issues.
Mr Bradley.
Mr Speaker, thank the Minister for his answer there, and tree planting is just one of many measures that can be employed to reduce the blue-green algae in Loch Ness. Has the Minister experienced any difficulty in acquiring semi-mature trees in Northern Ireland, and has Brexit or the Windsor Framework hampered the ability to bring semi-mature trees in from the rest of the UK?
Minister.
So Brexit hampered an awful lot, particularly in terms of the growth of the UK economy, and we're all paying the consequence of that. I worked through these issues. There is obviously trade between GB and NI, and there's challenges associated with that, but my officials work through these issues, and if there is particular concerns in terms of our tree planting targets and those being impeded as a result of the Windsor Framework, I'm happy to work through the UK Government to address those.
Steve Aiken.
Minister, has your department conducted any impact assessments on the EU-Mercosur agreement?
Thank the member for raising this question. It's something that I regularly read the Irish Farmers Journal, read it every week, page to page, and it's something that's been raised as a concern from the Irish Farmers Association. And whilst an agreed free trade agreement between the EU and Mercosur was announced on the 6th of December 2024, it is likely to be some time before this agreement is fully ratified and comes into effect, if it is indeed ever fully ratified. Talks in respect of an EU-Mercosur free trade agreement first commenced in 1999, with an agreement in principle being reached some 10 years later in June 2019. It is expected that progress will be on the full implementation of this agreement will remain slow. Whilst the agreement does not apply to the UK, it does have potential impact on UK agriculture markets, including Northern Ireland, due to the increased imports from Mercosur into the EU, particularly of beef and poultry. I appreciate the concerns expressed by the agriculture sector in relation to this agreement, but imports under reduced tariffs will be limited by a quota for some products, including beef, where the concessionary tariff of 7.5% is limited to 99,000 tonnes, and poultry, where tariff-free access is limited to 180,000 tonnes.
Dr. Reagan.
Thank you very much indeed. The Minister is aware that there is currently labelling on various agricultural goods that says not for sale within the EU. I wonder if the Minister could take the opportunity when his talks on north-south basis so that we could introduce labelling in goods in the Irish Republic for not for sale in the UK. That would therefore prevent Mercosur goods contaminating the Northern Ireland market, which is something indeed I think most Northern Ireland farmers would like to see.
On this wider issue, just in terms of the Mercosur trade deal, and we just need to step back a wee bit, and I recognise the concerns that are expressed not just by farmers in Northern Ireland but also in the Republic of Ireland, and I listen to those. But let's just look at the trade deals the UK did with the rest of the world. Not good trade deals, not good trade deals for farmers in the UK. So if people are trying to sell to me any benefits of Brexit, I struggle to find any. And I fully recognise that. And I fully recognise you're one of the enlightened few in relation to this, and I give you that credit.
John Bunting.
Mr Speaker, would the Minister give the House a status update on the provision of an animal cruelty register, please?
I thank the member for her question. So there's two aspects to this. First of all, there was discussion about an all-Ireland animal cruelty register, and I met up with the Minister, Charlie McConalogue, in Dublin a while ago to discuss that. At that meeting, Charlie outlined to me that they don't have any current plans to bring in a register in the south, and obviously that causes issues in terms of the north. But what more, I asked officials to review what the possibilities around this, and that's something we're going to be looking at in terms of the future pathway, in terms of animal welfare, and whether having the ability to access NI checks is one of the ways that we could actually potentially resolve this issue, but also get around the issue in terms of data protection and GDPR issues, because that's one of the key issues around this.
Ms. Bunting.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm really glad to hear the Minister say that. Does he accept that it is a matter of import for the public? And whilst elements fall between his department and the Department of Justice, it only takes one of them to move in order that we can gather some momentum on this significant issue.
So I've been working alongside this with the Justice Minister, who I have utmost respect for as a person with utmost integrity but also commitment towards addressing those issues that affect citizens of Northern Ireland. And in relation to this issue, the potential option in terms of giving ability to access NI checks around this is something I want to explore and want to be able to consider as a way to be able to address those concerns in terms of offenders having access.
Jonathan Buckley.
Minister, the Minister will be aware, obviously, that the Northern Ireland Environment Agency is continuing to be a stumbling block for many of the planning applications in the system at present. Can the Minister give us an update to the progress this agency is making?
Minister.
So, Northern Ireland Environment Agency, I have a lot of respect for, and I've been doing a lot of work in terms of increasing the processing times around applications. There's a further bid for additional staff to be able to do that. One of the issues around this is in terms of applications being made that don't meet the relevant criteria or you're able to give a proper assessment to because you require additional information. And that's about raising further awareness about what's required around this. So some of my engagement with stakeholders around ammonia, for example, is where we can provide additional information in advance of the application being made that will hopefully help speed up processing times. And so there will be a further engagement later this month with stakeholders around the issue of ammonia so that we can hopefully get an agreement in terms of the way forward on that, and then we can issue that guidance, which hopefully means that when people put in applications, there isn't a need for reconsultation on this.
Mr. Buckley.
Whilst I accept that there is some applications under the remit of the Northern Ireland Environment Agency that have not supplied the appropriate detail, there are vast swathes of genuine planning applications across a range of different sectors that are being held up with a carte blanche no or delayed response from the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. Can the Minister outline what level of funding could be rededicated and repurposed to ensuring that they fulfil their obligations and ensure that we can have a timely planning process?
So the issue of funding is quite key, and I'll take any funding going. So if it's been offered from other ministers, thank you, so we can do this. But the other one is about resources, about getting staff into post and being able to do their recruitment around that, and that's key. I would be confident that the Northern Ireland Environment Agency are working quite hard at this. Chief Executive of the Environment Agency has done a lot of good work in terms of turning the situation around. I know there's more needs to be done around this, and it's something that's quite key for me. But one of the issues around this is also about, and I do get your point, but we do need to raise further awareness in terms of ensuring when the applications go in, there isn't need further information and we can get it processed quickly.
Speaker, and the Minister will be aware that in October-November 2023 there was significant weather which resulted in a landslide in my constituency at the Shore Road, Restrever. This had significant adverse impact to the road, and right now, 14 months on, we're still at one lane, temporary traffic lights, road closure there, with input being required from DERA. And I would ask the Minister, could he provide any update on his liaisons with the DFI on this?
I'm aware of the issue from the correspondence, and there has been significant correspondence, not just from yourself but from others around this. I know DFI also play a role in regards to this. What I'll do is I'll check on what the latest situation is in relation to this, and I will write to you on it. But I understand the importance of this, particularly in terms of the traffic congestion it's caused as a result of it, but also in terms of the environmental damage that occurred as a result of the landslide.
Liz Forsyth.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer on this. On the 3rd of December, I had an adjournment debate here where the Infrastructure Minister had advised that he was waiting on further correspondence from Forestry on that. I just would ask the Minister, have you had any further engagement since the 3rd of December with the Infrastructure Minister on this specific issue?
Minister. I'm trying to recall that, and I can't. So what I'll do is I'll check and I'll come back to you on this issue. And if it's appropriate, then we can have a short meeting to move this along, because I'm conscious it's been going on for quite a while.
Declan McAleer.
This morning I attended the opening of the public inquiry into the proposals for a gold mine and processing plant in Tyrone. Does the Minister share the concerns of local people about the impact of this huge industrial proposal on public health and on the Sperrins AONB where the project is proposed for?
Minister.
So there is a public inquiry which has started today. I think members will understand I have to be very careful on what I say in relation to this. My department will work with that inquiry, and we can comply with any statutory requirements associated with the needs of the Public Accounts Committee and the Water Appeals Commission.
Mr. McAleer.
Thank you. Minister, I note that the inquiry runs until the end of March. I note from the running order that your department and associated bodies like NEA are scheduled to partake on most of these days. Given the strong local feeling and the scale of the concern, can the Minister give assurance that his department and officials are fully apprised and equipped to scrutinise this proposal to the level it requires?
Minister.
So two things, just in terms of my previous response. I said Public Accounts Committee, Planning Appeals Commission. There's two PACs in Northern Ireland, so it's the Planning Appeals Commission and the Water Appeals Commission. And I think it's important that giving assurance to you, but also the general public, the work that my officials do around this, I've got every confidence in them. They're professional individuals who are going to diligently perform their tasks in relation to this, and will comply with any of the requirements around the inquiry as is required.
Owen Tennyson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, can I ask for an update on the work that you're doing to ensure that those responsible for polluting our lochs and waterways are held accountable?
Sure.
So this is a very serious issue for me, but also for the people of Northern Ireland. And I think that the issue of water quality is something that has came so much on the public agenda, and it's on my agenda, because the 2 consecutive years of blue-green algae in Loch Ness is something of a massive concern, not just for Northern Ireland but more broadly. But also the issue around Belfast Loch and the issue of sewage pollution there, the areas of other areas of Northern Ireland in terms of water quality. So I've been taking action on this. I'll be working in conjunction with the Justice Minister in terms of review of fines and penalties around environmental crime. It's important that we undertake that, not just in relation to water quality, but also, for example, in relation to waste crime. Also in relation to wastewater, I believe that SORPI is not fit for purpose. I believe it's now time to end that arrangement. And that's why I have asked my officials to engage with both DFI and NI Water on this issue as part of an 8-week consultation with a view to terminating that. Once that consultation is completed, I will make a final decision on this issue. But I believe that all polluters in Northern Ireland should be treated the same. There should be no special dispensation for anyone. And I'll not be found wanting in relation to that because it's really, really important that we improve water quality in Northern Ireland.